A millionaire finds love online, but his dream romance shatters when her hidden agenda and shocking truth are finally exposed. He gave her his trust and fortune, believing in love, until the heartbreaking reality revealed a fake girlfriend with a dark plan. An online romance turns sinister when a millionaire uncovers the shocking truth of his girlfriend's lies and hidden agenda. What began as love soon twisted into betrayal, as a millionaire's online girlfriend revealed her shocking secret and true motives. Daniel Carter had always believed that with money came control. A self-made millionaire at only 37, he had risen from a modest upbringing in Ohio to owning a string of successful real estate firms across Chicago, New York, and Miami. His reputation in the market was solid, sharp, disciplined, and relentless when it came to business negotiations. Yet for all the glass towers he bought, the properties he flipped, and the parties where his presence drew attention, his personal life remained surprisingly quiet. Behind the sleek suits and tailored confidence was a man who often returned home to an empty penthouse overlooking the city skyline. A man who still longed for companionship beyond business contracts and financial success. That hunger for connection was what made him vulnerable when he met her. Her name was Alyssa Monroe, or at least, that was the name she gave him the first night their worlds collided online. She appeared in a private members-only forum that catered to professionals who wanted serious connections rather than shallow dating apps. Daniel had joined the platform out of curiosity, more than hope, but when Alyssa's profile came up, something about her disarmed him immediately. Her photo was elegant, but not overly polished. A brunette in her early 30s, seated at a cafe table, laughing naturally into the camera. She wasn't wearing flashy clothes or flaunting expensive brands. Instead, her aura was effortless, approachable, and mysterious all at once. Daniel clicked on her profile and read through the description. She described herself as a consultant who had grown tired of the endless cycle of meaningless dates and was looking for a man who valued real depth. Her words felt different. They weren't filled with cliches or rehearsed lines. Instead, they carried sincerity, or at least the kind of sincerity Daniel had always craved. He reached out, not expecting much. A simple message introducing himself and wishing her a good evening. To his surprise, she responded almost instantly. Her tone was warm, curious, and slightly playful. The more they spoke that night, the more Daniel felt like he was rediscovering something he had lost long ago. The thrill of genuine connection. Their chats turned into nightly conversations. Daniel found himself leaving the office earlier than usual just so he could pour a drink, sit back in his penthouse study, and log on to see if Alyssa was online. She was always there. And with every message, she seemed to anticipate his moods. When he was stressed, she calmed him. When he was reflective, she encouraged him. When he joked, she laughed in a way that made him feel like the center of her world. Weeks turned into months, and soon Alyssa became more than just an online companion. She became a fixture in Daniel's day-to-day life. He would wake up to a good morning message from her, receive thoughtful notes during his lunch breaks, and fall asleep after late-night calls where her voice was soft, reassuring, and intimate. For the first time in years, Daniel felt less alone. But what Daniel didn't know was that behind Alyssa's carefully chosen words and perfectly timed messages lay a much darker reality. She was not who she claimed to be, and the love story Daniel thought he was building was in fact a carefully orchestrated agenda designed to exploit not just his heart, but his entire world. The first cracks appeared subtly. Alyssa explained that she traveled often for her consulting work, which made it difficult to arrange in-person meetings. Daniel, being someone who had his own packed travel schedule, understood this at first. He told himself that timing was simply working against them. But the excuses multiplied. A client emergency here, A sudden family crisis there. Each time they planned to meet, something came up. Still, Alyssa never disappeared entirely. In fact, her consistency in communication made Daniel overlook the red flags. He told himself that someone putting in this much effort to connect daily must be sincere. He had dated women in the past who lived in the same city yet couldn't bother to check in. Alyssa's presence felt different, almost dedicated. Then came the first financial request. It was subtle, wrapped in vulnerability. She told him about an overseas trip that had gone wrong. Her card had been declined while trying to book a flight back, and she was stranded in Lisbon. Daniel remembered the moment vividly. He was at a gala when her desperate message arrived. Without hesitation, he wired her the money she asked for. To him, it was nothing, barely a dent in his fortune. More importantly, it felt like an opportunity to show her that he was reliable, someone she could count on. She thanked him profusely, sending long, heartfelt messages about how grateful she was, and how she had never met a man so kind. That night, as Daniel lay in bed scrolling through her words, he felt a rush of pride. He believed he was helping someone who truly cared about him. But as weeks passed, the requests multiplied. Sometimes it was a delayed paycheck from a client. Sometimes it was a sick relative who needed urgent care. Sometimes it was simply the burden of being caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Each story was crafted so well, Daniel never doubted her. He saw himself as her protector, her anchor in a world that seemed determined to test her. By now, his friends had started to notice. During one weekend gathering at his lake house, his closest friend, Marcus Green, pulled him aside. Marcus was the type of man who didn't mince words, and his loyalty to Daniel often came with blunt honesty.
"Dan,"
Marcus said, handing him a drink.
"you're smarter than this. You've been sending money to a woman you've never even met? Doesn't that raise alarms for you?"
Daniel bristled at the accusation.
"It's not like that. Alyssa isn't after my money. She's just going through things, and I want to be there for her."
Marcus shook his head.
"That's exactly what she wants you to think. Be careful, man. You have a lot to lose."
Daniel dismissed him, but the words lingered. Still, when Alyssa's next request came, this time involving a sudden relocation for work where her funds were tied up in international accounts, he sent the money anyway. What Daniel couldn't see was the network behind Alyssa's facade. She wasn't a consultant. She wasn't even Alyssa. She was part of a sophisticated ring of scammers who specialized in manipulating wealthy men through emotional vulnerability. Every message Daniel had received, every carefully chosen phrase, was scripted by professionals who knew how to exploit loneliness and desire. Months rolled on, and Daniel's involvement deepened. By now, he had sent Alyssa more than $250,000. He had also shared sensitive business information in their conversations, things he normally guarded fiercely. Alyssa had a way of making him talk, of convincing him that she was his safe space. And that trust was exactly what she, and the people behind her, wanted. One night, however, everything shifted. Daniel was working late when Marcus called him again. His friend sounded urgent.
"Dan, listen to me. I had one of my guys run a check on Alyssa. The photo she's using? It belongs to a woman in California, a real estate agent who has no idea her pictures are online. You're being played."
Daniel felt his stomach drop. He opened his laptop, pulled up Alyssa's profile, and for the first time, the details didn't feel as airtight as they once did. Doubt crept in. He confronted her that night. Alyssa's responses were defensive at first, then desperate, then filled with pleas for him to believe her. She claimed Marcus was jealous, that people wanted to tear them apart because they couldn't stand to see him happy. Daniel wanted to believe her, wanted it so badly that his heart waged war with his logic. But deep down, he knew Marcus was right. And that realization was only the beginning of uncovering the shocking truth behind Alyssa's identity, the hidden agenda she had pursued all along, and the dangerous game Daniel had unknowingly walked into. Daniel Carter sat in his study long after midnight, staring at the screen where Alyssa's words still glowed. He wanted to believe her, wanted to cling to the idea that the woman who had filled his empty nights with laughter and intimacy was real. But Marcus's discovery gnawed at him. The face he thought belonged to Alyssa Monroe was really that of an unsuspecting woman living her own life, far removed from the digital trap that had ensnared him. For the first time in months, Daniel read Alyssa's messages not with the warmth of love, but with the suspicion of betrayal. The way she had avoided every meeting, the endless excuses, the precise timing of her financial emergencies, it all lined up in ways he couldn't ignore anymore. The next morning, he hired a private investigator named Laura Jensen, a former cybercrime detective with a reputation for exposing fraud rings. Laura was sharp, discreet, and relentless when it came to finding the truth. Daniel handed her everything: chat logs, phone numbers, account details, wire transfers. Laura studied the data with the precision of a surgeon.
This isn't one woman,
she said flatly after an hour of examining the evidence.
This is a team. They build these fake personas to lure men like you, and once you're hooked, they pass the operation between members to keep it consistent. That's why she always seemed available, because it wasn't always the same person.
Daniel's heart sank. The idea that his late-night conversations, the confessions he thought were shared in trust, might have been written by different strangers around the world shattered him.
So none of it was real?
He asked quietly. Laura leaned back, her expression softened.
The emotions you felt were real, but the person who inspired them? That was an illusion carefully crafted to take advantage of you.
The words hit harder than he expected. He wasn't just angry, he was humiliated. A man who had built skyscrapers and out-negotiated billionaires had been reduced to a victim of digital manipulation. And yet, the thought of walking away quietly felt impossible. He needed answers. He needed to know who they really were, and why they had targeted him so intensely. Laura dug deeper. Within weeks, she traced the operation to a group based overseas, a sophisticated fraud syndicate that ran dozens of fake identities simultaneously. Their strategy was to target wealthy professionals, men who were often too busy to maintain personal relationships but craved emotional intimacy. Daniel had been a perfect mark, successful, lonely, and willing to believe in the dream of companionship. But the more Laura uncovered, the more dangerous the situation seemed.
These people don't just disappear when you stop sending money,
she warned him.
Sometimes they blackmail. Sometimes they threaten to expose private messages to damage reputations. If they think you're pulling away, they could retaliate.
Sure enough, the threats began. Alyssa, or rather, whoever was behind the account, sent Daniel a message one evening unlike any before. Gone was the sweet, affectionate tone. In its place was something colder. We know who you are. We know what you've shared. If you walk away now, those conversations won't stay private. Daniel's blood ran cold. He remembered the vulnerable things he had admitted in late-night chats, the moments he had confessed doubts about his business, the loneliness he had revealed. The idea of those private words being plastered across the internet, or worse, delivered to his competitors, was terrifying. But fear soon gave way to resolve. He had spent his life refusing to be bullied by anyone: banks, rival developers, politicians. He wasn't about to let a group of faceless scammers dictate his fate. With Laura's guidance, Daniel decided to fight back. He began by playing along. Instead of cutting Alyssa off completely, he responded with cautious affection, pretending he was still under her spell. Behind the scenes, Laura traced the digital footprints of every message, narrowing down the locations, identifying bank accounts, and piecing together the real individuals hiding behind the fabricated persona. It was a dangerous game. One wrong move, and the scammers might realize he was onto them. In the meantime, Daniel's emotional state wavered. Part of him still yearned for the connection, even knowing it was false. He caught himself rereading old messages, almost convincing himself that there had to be a real woman buried somewhere inside the deception. But late at night, when he looked out across the Chicago skyline from his penthouse balcony, he admitted the truth. He had fallen for a ghost, and that ghost had cost him more than money. It had cost him trust. The investigation reached a turning point when Laura discovered that one of the syndicate's members had slipped. A transfer Daniel had made months earlier led to a small bank account in Atlanta under the name
Monroe Consulting.
From there, the funds were funneled overseas, but the Atlanta account was traceable. Laura moved quickly, contacting federal authorities. The FBI's cybercrime division took interest in the case, especially given Daniel's high profile and the scale of money involved. What had begun as a personal betrayal was now part of a larger federal investigation into organized fraud. Daniel was asked to cooperate. It meant continuing the charade, keeping Alyssa close enough to feed investigators more evidence. It was excruciating. Every time he responded to her, every time he pretended to care, it reminded him of how deeply he had been deceived. But he forced himself to play the role. He was no longer a victim. He was bait, and justice was within reach. The climax came on a rainy Thursday night. Daniel received another urgent plea from Alyssa, claiming she needed funds to cover a sudden medical emergency abroad. Following the FBI's instructions, he agreed to wire the money, but the transaction was traced. Within hours, agents in multiple countries coordinated arrests. Several members of the ring were taken into custody, including the individual linked to the Atlanta account. When Laura delivered the news, Daniel felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. The woman he thought he loved had never existed, yet her shadow had consumed nearly a year of his life. The operation was exposed, the hidden agenda revealed, and yet his heart still carried the scars. In the aftermath, Daniel worked with the authorities to recover as much of his lost money as possible. Not all of it came back, but what mattered more was the closure. He no longer lived under the illusion of Alyssa's affection, nor under the threat of blackmail. Instead, he had faced the darkness head-on and refused to let it define him. Months later, Daniel found himself at one of his own real estate ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions, and the world saw the confident millionaire they always had. But inside, Daniel had changed. He was more cautious now, less willing to take people at face value. He had learned the hard way that even in a digital world, love could be weaponized. And yet, in the quiet moments when he sat with Marcus or spoke with Laura, he admitted something unexpected. The experience, painful as it was, had forced him to confront his own loneliness. He realized that what made him vulnerable wasn't naivety. It was the human need for connection. The scammers had exploited it, but they hadn't destroyed it. Daniel would love again someday, but this time with eyes wide open, with a heart guarded not by walls, but by wisdom. As he stood overlooking the city's skyline one evening, Daniel thought about how close he had come to losing not just his money, but his dignity. Instead, he had turned the tables. The truth had been revealed. The hidden agenda had collapsed. And while the scars would remain, so would the strength of knowing he had survived one of the most dangerous games of modern love. The story of Daniel Carter wasn't just about a millionaire's online girlfriend being exposed. It was about how easily digital love can become digital betrayal, how even the wealthiest are not immune to loneliness, and how the shocking truth of fake love can teach us more about ourselves than we ever imagined. Daniel looked out at the city, took a deep breath, and whispered to himself,
Never again.
If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable true-to-life stories that reveal the hidden side of love, trust, and betrayal in our modern world.